Living waters flow on, sweep away my pain. Bring your healing to my heart. Help me love once again. Cares and worries get me down. Fear of failure fills my day. When I'm lost and all alone, help me, Lord, to find your way. People knocking at my door, strangers seeking love and care. Never let me turn them down. Teach me gently how to share. Children, come into my life with your laughter and your song. When will I become like them? Teach me, Lord, to sing along.
Hello dear friends. Earlier we were speaking about the rise of David as the king of Judah. And we see the people of Israel also now accept him as the king of Israel. And this is a story that we will find in chapter 5. We find the people of Israel coming to David and asking him to be their king when Ishbaal, their king, was murdered. Of course, we know David was happy about it. Only that he wanted to make sure that the people of Israel will accept him as their king on good times. When the people of Israel came to him and asked him to be their king too, David agreed. And of course, the people of Israel made some demands which he accepted. And that is what you'll find there. And this is the story that we read in chapter 5 of 2 Samuel. And when the people of Israel accepted David as the king, now we see David becomes the king of both Judah and Israel. And unitedly, they are called the kingdom of Israel. And David was ruling from Hebron. But there was a problem with that rule based in Hebron. Hebron was a town in the south. And if he is going to rule from Hebron, the other tribes will say or accuse David of showing partiality to the Judites. And hence, David himself wanted to have a new capital. He cannot rule from any one of the territory of the tribes. If he is ruling based in the territory of one particular tribe, other tribes will say that David is favoring that particular tribe. Of course, we are familiar with the story that we find Delhi, our national capital, earlier was a part of UP, but then it came to be separated from UP and it was constituted as a union territory. And hence, we will see nobody would be finding fault with saying, okay, partiality is shown to one particular state. In the same way, here David wanted to establish a neutral capital, that is, a capital city which belongs neither to Judah nor to Israel. And David has his plans for the same. And David knew about the city of Jebusites, that is, the city of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem was the capital city of the Jebusites. And practically speaking, we can say Jerusalem was long established as the capital of a kingdom. And therefore, there was a royal setup, palace, and the culture of the court, and other necessary facilities, we can say, which are befitting for a kingdom, befitting for the capital of a kingdom. And therefore, David wanted to conquer the city of Jerusalem and make it his own capital. But it was not so easy. Jerusalem was built on the top of the hills, and to climb up the mounts of Jerusalem was considered to be difficult. And this is clear from the words of the Jebusites of Jerusalem. They were speaking almost in this line, that the blind and the lame, they can keep their city. And we know what is the implication of this. Even such differently abled people can safeguard the city or protect the city, means it will not be easy to conquer it or capture it. And that is what we can see. And therefore, when we look at the story or the historical scenario, we find David is trying to capture the city, and he found out the way for it. He went to capture the city through the water city, or through the place where the water was brought in to the city for its need. And without losing many people, David was able to conquer Jerusalem. And once Jerusalem is conquered, it came to be known as the city of David. And thus, the great city began its origin in this way. The Jebusite city of Jerusalem becomes now the city of David, and now it is the capital of the kingdom of Israel. When we say Israel, it includes both Judah and Israel, not just Israel alone. And when he found out this, or when he conquered this, then he had established a neutral capital. And now nobody will find fault with him saying, "You have shown partiality or favoritism to your people, Judites." And there was an added advantage, and that is the city of Jerusalem lies on the border of the two kingdoms in a way, or the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom, or Judah and Israel. And since it was in the border of both the nations, now it is easy. And by conquering Jerusalem, David was able to establish the political unity of the nation. Okay, now there are not two kingdoms but only one. The kingdom of Israel, which consists of the kingdom of Judah or the Judites and the kingdom of Israelites or Israel. This is the advantage of establishing his own city. And since it is the city of the king, naturally all the people are to come to Jerusalem to see the king, to settle a case or things like that. And therefore Jerusalem became really a busy city, the center of the administration. And David was known to be a very good administrator, besides his military capabilities. And therefore, this is what we can see see about the conquest of Jerusalem. And when we think of Jerusalem, there is a very great advantage geographically. We know, earlier we had mentioned once, I think, that there were two important kingdoms in the known world of the time. One is the Egyptian Empire and the other is the Mesopotamian Empire, based in the Middle East or the Mesopotamian area, in and around the plains of the rivers of Euphrates and Tigris. And there were always very powerful emperors in both these kingdoms, and therefore we will find they were always trying to remain glorious and mighty in their own kingdom. And not only that, their ambition was to capture the other empire. There is a special advantage for the city of Jerusalem. And the reason is, it lies on the way to the other kingdom. Egypt has to go across Palestine to reach Mesopotamian kingdoms. And the Mesopotamian Empire has to go to Egypt through Palestine. And the way crosses nearby Jerusalem. And therefore, Palestine as a whole has a very great geographical importance. One who wants to conquer the other empire naturally will have to conquer first Palestine. And this is what was needed. And therefore here we see, when David was the king in Jerusalem, naturally he gets a bargaining power with the western kingdom of Egypt and the eastern kingdom of Mesopotamia. And David is in control of the Palestine. And therefore, when he conquered Jerusalem, he has also conquered the Palestinian area or the Palestine area, and thereby becoming a strong contestant whenever there is a war between Egypt and the Mesopotamian kingdoms. Therefore, that is the geographical importance that we can understand and think of. Okay, now this Jerusalem, it was practically a city with a royal culture, much better than that of Hebron, because we know Saul became king in Hebron, but even though he had a palace and so on, he did not have much about the royal culture, royal setup. But here we find when Jerusalem is conquered by David, he inherits a royal city, and therefore David did not destroy the royal culture and setup there. In fact, he accepted them, and therefore we find he was ready to go forward in this new arrangement. And he wanted to practically build upon the existing royal setup. And that is what we'll find here. And thus we see Jerusalem now grows still in a better way under the able leadership and rule of King David. Okay, this is what we can see. And as we mentioned earlier, the capture of the city of Jerusalem contributed so much to the political unity of the nation, because Jerusalem now is the center, the capital of the entire nation, Judah and Israel. And now Jerusalem has acquired much prominence and importance as the capital city of King David. Therefore, this is the story that is narrated in the in the 5th chapter of the second book of Samuel. And there also we find, now there was an attack from the Philistines. Seeing that David is increasing in power, they wanted to come and prevent him from further expanding his kingdom. But we see David defeats them thoroughly with the help of God. And thus we can see he is in full charge of the western part of the Palestine, we can say. And the Philistines are no more a threat for him. And that is how we see the kingdom grows in its area, in extent, we can see. For all these are the important subject matter that we find in chapter 5. Okay, now we go to chapter 6. And when we go to chapter 6, we can see David is trying to make Jerusalem practically the city of God. Okay, what does it mean? Earlier we said David was able to achieve political unity by conquering Jerusalem the city of Jebusites. Thus, he established a neutral capital and achieved the aim. And now he wanted to establish a religious unity among the people, because we know the tribes were always standing little bit aloof, and only a religious unity, only if a religious unity is established, he can rule them still better. And therefore, now he plans out something. And what's it? He now, once he has established a stable capital and he has built his own palace, he wants to bring, the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem. We know what all things were kept in the Ark of the Covenant. We had mentioned about it earlier. The tablets of the 10 Commandments, the manna, the heavenly food which the people of Israel received in the desert, and also the staff of Aaron that bloomed. And all these three were kept in the Ark of the Covenant. And the Ark of the Covenant stood as the live symbol of God's presence amidst his people. That is, God is lively present in the midst of his people. And Ark of the Covenant stood for this divine presence. And now David thinks of bringing the Ark of the Covenant to the city of Jerusalem. And again, his political wisdom is clear from it. He wants to establish a religious unity among the people, among the tribes. And when God is there in their midst, naturally we know they will be able to contribute their best to God on one side and receive God's blessings on the other. And thus we see David establishes a temple-like structure. Of course, no temple is built there. Only the tent of the presence of the Lord was there, and that was the symbol of Yahweh's presence among the people of Israel. And by bringing the Ark of the Covenant, he wanted to establish the political unity, besides the political unity, the religious unity of the people. And when David set out to bring the ark, of course, we know the ark was kept once it was captured by the Philistines and sent back to Israel. It was positioned in Kiriath Jearim. And we have seen the story in 1 Samuel chapter 5 and 6. As the ark is brought from there to the capital city of Jerusalem, so many events take place. First of all, we can say David did not succeed in bringing the ark at the first instance. We find there was a solemn celebration. So many sacrifices were offered, and later on we find as the procession was going on, there was some difficult incidents or sorrowful incidents that took place. When the ark was taken in solemn procession, it was carried in a cart, and the oxen that carried the ark happened to go wild, and the cart was shaken very violently. With the result, the ark seemed to be falling down, or it was about to fall down from the cart. And seeing this, an Israelite, a man by name Uzzah, he came running and caught hold of the ark so that it may not fall down. The ark stood erect, but the next moment we find something very sorrowful. The man who held on to the ark to support it fell down immediately dead. And naturally, it was a big question for the people. Why is this? And the people became really afraid of Yahweh and His presence. And the result, they stopped carrying the ark to Jerusalem. The procession ended up in the middle way, we can say. And the ark was kept there itself. And after some time, there is a second effort to bring the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. And we hear the story that there were so many sacrifices that were offered while the ark was being brought. And the people were singing and dancing on one side to celebrate. And the priest and others, and David included, were sacrificing hundreds of oxen and so on, or victims, and as a sacrifice to Yahweh. And thus we find the ark was taken to Jerusalem in this way, with a great celebration. And together with the people, David also began to dance in front of the ark, welcoming the ark and also expressing the joy and happiness that he had. And of course, during the dance, it happens, it was just like a wild dance. And David was almost dancing like half naked. And this was seen by David's wife Michal, the daughter of King Saul, who was given it to David in marriage. And she was the beloved wife of David. When he went to the palace, or returned to the palace, after placing the ark in the tent of the presence of the Lord, now we find he was really mocked at and teased by Michal. And she began to make comments like this: "Oh, you were singing and dancing before your maids, half naked. And how can a king do like it? It is shameful for you. Okay, when she encountered David in this way, David gave a reply. You know, I was dancing, but I was dancing before the Lord and not before the maids. And through that answer, he gave out what exactly was he was doing. He was dancing before the Lord and not to show the people. And therefore, we find David was able to give her a reply. But that created practically a tension between David and Michal. And then there's a comment that draws attention of every reader of Samuel. And what's it? It is said, from that day onwards, Michal had no children. And up to that, she had no children. Practically, she was barren. When this story is narrated here, the readers get an impression that Michal was cursed by the Lord or punished by the Lord. And that was impression of the people too. And thus, later on we find barrenness came to be considered as a punishment from God. Of course, we do not consider it as a punishment. In fact, we find the women who were barren in the history of the Old Testament, they all depended on Yahweh all the more and prayed to Yahweh. And in an extraordinary way, in a miraculous way, they received the blessing of the Lord. And they received the blessing in the form of children. And we find the case of Sarah, wife of Abraham. She conceived a son when she was 90. The mother of Samuel, it was the same way. And in the New Testament also we will find Zachariah and Elizabeth. Okay, the barren women, practically they become the mothers of great men or people who guided the people of Israel in a glorious and important way. Therefore, barrenness is not to be considered as a punishment, but rather it is a natural phenomena, we have to say, or natural phenomenon. And the one who trusts in Yahweh will be blessed with the children according to Yahweh's plan. And therefore, we can really understand the importance of this. And not only that, we find that barrenness really gave an occasion for those concerned people to trust in the Lord all the more and to receive these kinds of tests that come from the Lord. And when they are able to receive with faith these tests, we find they will be blessed by the Lord abundantly. And that is the story that we will find here with regard to the understanding of barrenness. And now, when the ark was brought to Jerusalem, there is another implication. Ark is considered to be holy, and thus Jerusalem becomes holy Jerusalem. Practically, we know why it is holy Jerusalem? Because God, the source and author of holiness, God who is totally, absolutely holy, is now in their midst. And therefore, it calls for holiness from the part of the people, especially for those who come to the temple of the Lord. Thus we see holiness becomes a key factor in understanding about God and His guidance of the people of Israel. And when the city is with the Ark of the Covenant, it was called to be as the city of Yahweh, because Yahweh has chosen to live there. And about the city of Jerusalem, he would say, "This is my dwelling place on earth." And therefore, that is the way it was understood. And thus we can see David is able to bring the Ark of the Covenant and establish it in Jerusalem, and thus we see everyone now becomes practically the everyone accept the fact that Jerusalem is now the city of God. Thus, David achieves on one side the political unity and on the other the religious unity. And Jerusalem becomes the city of David first, and then the city of God later. And because Yahweh is the God of Jerusalem, the people thought, or people believed, it is Yahweh's duty to protect the city from the enemies. And that was the understanding the people had. Yahweh will protect the city. No power will prevail over Jerusalem. And even if the people were leading a sinful life, even if they forget Yahweh, go after other gods, the people thought it is the duty of Yahweh to protect the city. And it became something like a magical or automatic understanding. And that is, since Yahweh is there, He will protect. Nobody will be able to defeat Yahweh. However the people live, doesn't matter. But actually, that was not the real meaning of it. The prophets will correct this thinking pattern of the people of Israel later when they appear on the scene. And now this was the way how people understood about Jerusalem, and the Ark of the Covenant kept in the city of Jerusalem. Okay, therefore these are the important points that we can reflect on in chapters 5 and 6 of 2 Samuel. And the rest we will do in the next session. Okay, thank you.
Loving God, we thank you for the blessing of reading your word together. We ask that these words of life, truth, and hope would continue to impact us in the days ahead. May your love and grace follow each of us, refreshed and blessed by you. Amen.